30 minutes. I want you to look at the clock and, really think about what 30 minutes feels like.
It's not a lot of time.
It's nothing. It's the length of a sitcom episode, maybe how long it takes to cook a decent pasta dinner.
Yeah.
But according to the massive stack of reports and data we have on the desk today, 30 minutes is also the average time it takes for a monitoring tool to find a critical security weakness in our energy grid.
Which, when you actually stop and process it, is a terrifying statistic.
It is.
And just to be crystal clear, we aren't talking about finding a sticky note with password 123 on it. We are talking about discovering fundamental structural flaws in the systems that keep the lights on.
Exactly. Welcome back to another deep dive. Today, we are cracking open the black box of the energy grid. We all do it. We flip the switch, the light turns on, and we just move on. We trust it implicitly.
Out of sight, out of mind.
But behind that switch is a massive, complex network of operational technology, or OT. And frankly, the more I read through this, the more I realize how precarious that black box might be.
It's a classic case. We take the grid for granted because it works so well so often. But for the people managing these grids, the visibility, or really the lack of it, is becoming a massive headache.
So let's set the stage properly. Our primary source is a huge study from Omicron. It's titled Survey of 100+ Energy Systems Reveals Critical OT Cybersecurity Gaps.
And I think it's important to stress the quality of this data.
Right.
This isn't just a survey where they called up managers and asked, hey, is your grid secure?
A self-report.
Yeah.
Which is always going to be optimistic.
Let's just say, yeah, optimistic. This is hard data. Omicron deployed their intrusion detection system, StationGuard, in over 100 real-world installations, substations, power plants, all over the world.
And this started back in 2018, right? So we have a pretty good view over time.
Exactly. It gives us a timeline of how things have evolved, or in some cases, how they haven't.
Our mission today is to uncover these invisible risks. And a spoiler alert for you listening. The biggest threat isn't always some guy in a hoodie trying to hack the mainframe.
The Hollywood version?
Yeah. Sometimes it's a forgotten printer.
Yeah.
Or a software patch that hasn't been applied since, since a very long time ago.
The Hollywood version of cyber warfare is exciting, sure, but the reality is often much more mundane and, honestly, significantly more dangerous because of it. It's the boring stuff that gets you.
Okay, so before we get into the scary findings, and there are a few, we need to clarify the landscape. We keep throwing around OT, operational technology. How is this actually different from the IT setups in our offices?
That's the million-dollar question.
Why can't a power plant just run the same antivirus I have on my laptop?
It's a crucial distinction. IT, information technology, that's what we all know. Email, spreadsheets, databases. In IT, the priority is usually confidentiality, data integrity.
Right. If my email server crashes, it's just a bad day. Nobody gets hurt.
Exactly. A bad Tuesday? OT is completely different. OT deals with physics. These are the machines, the high-voltage breakers, the sensors that manage the actual physical flow of electricity.
At lethal voltages.
Absolutely. So the number one priority isn't data privacy, it's availability and safety. If an OT system fails, you don't just lose a spreadsheet. You lose power to a city. Equipment can actually blow up.
So the stakes are physically higher. It's not virtual. But you said you can't just use standard antivirus. Why is that, technically?
You really can't. A lot of these devices, we call them PAC-C systems for protection, automation, and control. They don't run Windows. They're embedded devices, custom firmware, often on very limited hardware.
So they don't have the processing power?
Not at all. In fact, if you tried to actively scan some of these older controllers with a standard IT tool, you might actually crash them.
Which violates the number one rule. Keep the power on.
Precisely. You cannot risk crashing the grid just to see if it's secure. That's a total non-starter.
Okay, that explains the methodology in the study. That they talk about passive monitoring, connecting to mirror ports or Ethernet TAPs.
Think of it like a digital wiretap. They plug into the network switch and tell it, send me a copy of everything that goes by. They're analyzing the conversation between devices without jumping into the conversation themselves.
Ghosts in the machine.
Exactly.
But here's the kicker, and the source brings this up as a major theme. The convergence.
Yeah.
These OT systems, they used to be islands. I always assumed power plants were totally cut off from the internet.
We used to call that air-gapped, a beautiful security model. The operations network was physically separate, no wire connecting it to the office network or the internet.
That's changing.
Rapidly. We want data. We want remote access. We want smart grids. We want predictive maintenance. So IT and OT are merging.
And when they merge, the walls come down.
And the security measures often don't travel across that bridge. You're connecting legacy equipment stuff built 20 years ago that was never meant to talk to the outside world to modern, messy networks.
Which brings us right back to that 30-minute stat.
Yeah.
What exactly are they finding so quickly?
It's a mix, but let's look at one specific example the source highlights because it really illustrates the fragility here. It's a vulnerability known as CVE-2025-40553.
Okay, break that down for us.
It is a vulnerability in Siemens Seprotec 4 protective relays. Now, these are ubiquitous devices. They are what detect faults and trip circuit breakers to prevent damage. This vulnerability allows for a denial of service attack.
So you can shut down the very device that's supposed to protect the grid.
Yes, and you can do it with a single UDP packet.
One packet. Just one line of code, basically.
One packet sent to port 50,000. It puts the device into an infinite loop and it just stops responding. It effectively bricks the protection until you physically reboot it.
That is shockingly fragile. But I noticed the CVE number 2015. That means this was discovered.
Over a decade ago, yes. The patch has been available since 2015. And yet, this survey found numerous devices still running the vulnerable firmware today.
That's mind-boggling. I mean, imagine not updating your phone since 2015. But this isn't a phone. It's a critical safety device.
Right.
Why aren't they patching these things?
It's rarely laziness. It goes back to that availability issue. Patching requires downtime. You have to take the device offline, update it, and then test it to make sure the update didn't break anything.
And getting that maintenance window in a 247 power grid is hard.
Incredibly hard. So you get this mindset of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The device is sitting there, the lights are green, why touch it?
But in cybersecurity, not broke doesn't mean secure.
Not even close. They see the device working, so they don't want to touch it, but they are leaving a door wide open that everyone has known about for 10 years.
It's not just old firmware, though. The report talks about the flat network issue. That sounds like an architectural problem.
It is. A flat network means there's weak or no segmentation. Imagine a high-security office building where your badge gets you in the front door. But once you're in, you can walk into the CEO's office, the server room, the vault, everywhere.
So if a hacker gets past the perimeter,
They can go anywhere. Lateral movement is trivial. The survey found entire facilities operating as a single large, flat network. Hundreds of devices, all talking to each other with no restrictions.
and the source even mentioned office IT networks could reach remote substations.
Correct. That's the nightmare scenario. Someone in billing clicks a phishing link, their computer gets infected, and because the network is flat, that malware can propagate all the way to a substation controller miles away.
The blast radius is huge.
The entire organization. And it's not just internal traffic. The source flagged risky connections to the outside world. Undocumented external TCP/IP connections. In one substation, they found over 50 persistent connections to external IPs.
50. In one substation, who are they talking to?
That's the scary part. Often the operators didn't even know. Could be a vendor, could be a leftover configuration from a contractor who needed remote access years ago and they just never turned it off.
But every single one of those is a potential tunnel into the grid.
Everyone.
This feels like a massive visibility problem. Which leads perfectly to this next part. The case of the hidden devices. I love this phrase from the report. You can't protect what you don't know.
It's the golden rule of cybersecurity. Asset inventory. If you don't know you have a server, you can't patch it. You can't defend it.
And apparently, their usual method manual inventories is a disaster.
It's archaic. Someone walking around with a clipboard or an Excel sheet that hasn't been updated since the guy who made it retired.
So Station Guard starts listening, and it finds what the report calls phantom hardware.
It sounds spooky, but it's just the reality of a messy network. They found untracked IP cameras, they found random printers, automation devices that nobody had documented.
I just love the image of a random printer sitting in a high-voltage facility. Why is it there?
It happens all the time. A maintenance crew comes in, they need to print a diagnostic report, they bring a cheap Wi-Fi printer, plug it into the nearest Ethernet port, print their report, and then they just leave it there.
And now you have a consumer-grade device, probably with a default password, just sitting on your critical network.
Exactly. And that printer is now an entry point. It's broadcasting, waiting to be exploited, and it's a vulnerability nobody accounts for because it's not supposed to be there.
So how do they catch these phantoms? The report gets a bit technical here. Passive identification versus active querying. What's the difference?
Right. So passive identification relies on the design files. In the power grid world, we use a standard called IEC 61850. It uses something called System Configuration Description Files, or SCD files.
The CD files. Okay, so those are like the blueprints of the house.
Perfect analogy. The SCD file tells you what should be there, but, the blueprints don't always match what's actually built.
So the passive monitoring reads the blueprints, but it misses things like firmware versions.
Right, because devices don't constantly shout, hey, I'm running version 2.1 over the network. So to find the firmware, to find that rogue printer, you need active querying.
Which is where you knock on the door.
Exactly. They use the MMS protocol to actively ask the devices, who are you? What is your serial number? What firmware are you running?
So you need both. The blueprint for what was intended and the active interrogation for what's actually there.
Precisely. That combination is the only way to get a true picture, and the gap between the two is often where the risk is hiding.
Now, here's where the story takes a twist. We worry so much about hackers, but the Omicron study found a whole category of risks that have nothing to do with cyber attacks. They call them functional risks.
This is a fascinating part of the study, and honestly, it's what appeals most to the OT engineers. They found that in many cases, the network was just broken in ways that impacted reliability, self-inflicted wounds.
The most frequent issue was VLAN misconfigurations.
Right. VLANs are used to segment traffic, create fast lanes for important data. In a substation, you have these critical messages called GOOSE messages.
Goose, like the bird.
Yes, GOSE, Generic Object-Oriented Substation Event. Funny name, serious protocol. These are high-priority messages like, trip the breaker now.
So if I'm a relay and I see a fault, I send a goose message to the breaker saying, open up.
Exactly. And that message has to arrive in milliseconds. The study found inconsistent tagging of these messages. If the network switches aren't configured right, that goose message gets stuck in traffic.
It's like an ambulance getting stuck in rush hour because nobody cleared the lane.
Perfect analogy. And in a power grid, if that trip command is 20 milliseconds too late, you might blow a transformer. That's physical damage from a network typo.
Wow. Speaking of timing, they also found issues with time synchronization. Does it really matter if the clock is a second off?
In the grid, yes. It's critical for forensic analysis. If a blackout happens, you need to know the exact sequence of events. Device A tripped at this millisecond. Device B tripped 3 milliseconds later.
But they found devices in the wrong time zones or using default timestamps.
So if you're trying to investigate a crash and one device thinks it's 2026 and another thinks it's 1970, you're flying blind. You can't reconstruct the event.
They also mentioned redundancy failures, something about RSTP loops.
RSTP, Rapid Spanning Tree Protocol. It's designed to prevent infinite loops in network traffic. But if you misconfigure it, you can create what's called a broadcast storm.
Data just circles endlessly, clogging everything up.
Like a car doing donuts on the highway.
Yeah.
Nobody else can get through. They found cases where this caused severe performance degradation, slowing down the entire control network.
So even if no hacker ever touches these systems, they're already limping along because of these configuration errors.
Correct. And ironically, that makes a hacker's job easier. A chaotic, misconfigured network is much easier to hide in than a clean, well-monitored one.
Which brings us to the root cause. We can blame the tech, but ultimately it's the people, the human factor.
It always is. The report highlights departmental boundaries.
The silos, IT versus OT.
Exactly. You have IT teams who are tasked with securing the OT environment because they know security, but they might not understand the physics. They might try to apply a patch that crashes a critical controller.
And on the flip side,
you have OT engineers who are brilliant at electricity. They know everything about phase angles and voltage drops, but they aren't trained in network security. They don't think about open ports. They just want the current to flow.
And there's a severe lack of dedicated OT security personnel.
Resources are limited. It's a niche skill set. So you end up with insecure services left enabled simply because no one had the time or knowledge to turn them off.
Like unused Windows file sharing or IPv6 services enabled but not used.
It's like leaving the windows of your house open in a room you never use. It's fine until someone climbs in. They also found license management tools running with elevated privileges.
Which sounds like giving someone the master key.
It is. If you compromise that tool, you have administrative rights, the keys to the kingdom. And it's often just running in the background, forgotten.
So to recap, we have a converging landscape, vulnerabilities found in 30 minutes, single packet kill switches, flat networks, hidden printers, and broken configurations. It sounds bleak.
It is concerning. But I don't want to be all doom and gloom. The good news is that visibility is the first step to recovery. The fact that this study exists, that tools like StationGuard are being deployed, means the industry is waking up.
So let's talk about the solution. The source mentions allow listing. How is that different from what we usually think of with antivirus?
Traditional antivirus uses block listing. It has a massive list of known bad things and blocks them. It assumes everything is good unless it's on the bad list.
Right.
In OT, the traffic should be very predictable. A breaker talks to a controller, that's it. It shouldn't be browsing Reddit.
So allow listing flips the script.
You define exactly what is allowed, normal behavior. Device A can talk to device B using protocol X. Anything that deviates from that, even slightly, triggers an alarm.
So if that rogue printer suddenly starts talking to a server in another country,
Alarm. Immediate visibility. It doesn't matter if it's a known virus or a brand new attack. If it's not on the allowed list, it gets flagged.
and it understands the language, right?
Yeah.
It knows what a goose message is.
Yes, it parses the specific protocols IEC 104, MMS, Goose. It knows if a command is legitimate or if it's malformed. It's not just looking at the envelope, it's reading the letter inside.
So the technology exists, it's a matter of implementation.
Implementation and breaking down those silos. Basic cyber hygiene, the patching, the inventory, the segmentation. You can't just bolt security on at the end. The IT guys and the OT guys need to have lunch together.
A massive challenge, but a necessary one. As we wrap up, I want to leave everyone with a thought based on that opening statistic.
The 30-minute rule.
Exactly. If a friendly auditor, someone invited in to help, can find a critical flaw in a power plant in just 30 minutes, how long would it take a motivated adversary who isn't playing by the rules?
That is the question that should keep utility CEOs and, frankly, all of us awake at night. Because the attackers only have to be right once. The defenders have to be right every single time.
And as our homes, our electric cars, our entire lives become more dependent on the grid, can we really afford to leave these digital backdoors unlocked?
I think we all know the answer to that.
We certainly do. That's all for today's deep dive into the hidden world of OT security. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.